Welcome to the Conscious Pivot Podcast with international speaker, business mentor, best-selling author of Pivot, and your host, Adam Markel. The Conscious Pivot shares the stories and wisdom of people who have successfully reinvented some area of their business and personal life. You'll gain powerful insights into how you can fully embrace new opportunities, increase your performance, and master the art and science of innovation and resilience. So please join Adam as he guides you on your conscious pivot.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Markel, and I am feeling just so fortunate and blessed as I sit here in this moment, sitting in the seat of gratitude, figuratively, literally just feeling grateful for the day. And I've got a great guest, somebody that I came to know a couple of months ago. We have some mutual friends now. It's been a total love fest. So I'm so glad that I get to introduce all of you to Brenda Neckvatal. I'm going to say a little bit about her, read a little bit of her bio, and then we'll dive right in. So Brenda is an award-winning HR professional and is often referred to as, get this, the HR force of nature. That's so cool. I was an attorney and I practiced employment law for a lot of years. So an HR force of nature. Holy smokes. I got chills from that. And of course, she didn't give herself that name. That comes directly from her clients. So not only does she help businesses and their leaders solve the most difficult people issues. I know, and nobody can relate to that. She is a specialist in crisis management, government contracting, HR compliance, and a mentor to women in HR working situations. And I think it's just, there's a lot to that. So I want to dive into that. But first, I want to say Brenda is also a devoted volunteer in the Navy SEAL community and is constantly finding new ways of supporting veterans of naval special warfare. She dedicates 32 weeks a year working with the Honor Foundation to support the career transition of Special Forces personnel by providing them with her knowledge, insight, and creativity. Brenda, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. It's been a few months.
It has been a couple of months. So what is not written, or let's say one thing that's not a part of the written bio I've just read that you would love for people to know about you?
You dropped the bomb on me. I was not expecting this question. You know what? I think the thing that people that's not in the bio is that, the bio is pretty impressive, right? But I'm just a normal, average, goofy human being that still is out there figuring it out just like everybody else. I've got areas where I'm good at things and I have areas where, ooh,
Well, you and I were talking about that right before we started, that you were saying to me that you are, let's say, we're not born necessarily with the marketing gene, but you are a student, a perpetual student. So you're learning marketing and getting better at it. And the results are showing.
It's my influential language for the last, as a professional for the last 20 years is in HR. And I didn't know that you were an employment attorney, so you understand.
I don't think that came up last time we talked. So
if it did, I totally forgot, but I won't now. But it's like, that's a different kind of language than marketing. I mean, it's a different type of persuasion and it's a different type of influence conversation. And then you have to flip over to marketing where, it's funny. You had a guest on a little while ago, Will Branham, and we were talking about this because, Will and I are friends, and we were talking. I was explaining to him, I said, for me, that's really like putting me right in the middle of it's totally out of my comfort zone, because I have to now say, I think you need to believe that I'm worth you spending your money on me. And that's a weird feeling. He goes, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I said, yeah, it's, you're almost 2 years out of your retirement. And look how long it took you to be able to say, hi, I'm Will Branham and I'm a Navy SEAL, because they don't do that.
Right. Yeah. He's 26 years in the Navy SEALs and he leaves. And that was an amazing, I think, a really wonderful podcast we had, because he got so vulnerable about the fact that you leave a family like that, you leave a team and a support system like that, and the transition support that exists outside of that really tight-knit group isn't so great.
No,
or at least it seems like that's the case.
no.
And so Will, has made his own adjustments into, as you
Yep.
say, being able to introduce himself not only as a former Navy SEAL, but as a business owner, as an entrepreneur,
Yep.
as somebody who's now selling himself. And as you said,
Exactly.
it's a different kind of influence.
It is. It totally is. It's like speaking Spanish your whole life and then trying to figure out how to speak Japanese or vice versa. It's hard. I mean, it's like two things are not the same, not even remotely close. I mean, Spanish and Italian, yeah, they're both Latin based, but Japanese and Spanish, mm-mm. But that's what it feels like.
Yes. And so have you've been able to pick it up through what's been
Yep.
your process of learning this new language, let's call it?
Well, the first piece of the process is to let go of what you think you know. That's the hardest thing right there. I mean,
Humility.
right? Exactly. But
But you
that
don't understand. My whole self-image, everything
yeah,
that the world thinks of me is
yeah.
based on what I know and what I've learned over this time. You're telling me right out of the gate I should let go of what I think I know?
What you think you know, what you think. So what you know and what you think you know are two totally different things, right? What you think you know, and this is across the board when it comes to people, right? This aligns with my number one live and die rule in life, and that is in the absence of information, people make stuff up, right? So when you go into business, like here's a good example. I come out and I say, hey, listen, I got this really great thing that I want you to come and buy. It's $20. It'll help you out. It'll do all sorts of good stuff for you. And you know what? I'm making it available to you. So you say that, you write it, you email it, you post it in social, right? It's all over the place. But what's going on in here, because you don't get any reciprocal feedback that comes in, what happens up here and what you think you know is there's no way in hell anybody's gonna buy this. Why who am I to put something like that out? Like what the hell was I thinking? Do I really need to be an independent contractor, or should I go and get a 9 to 5 because I'm not worthy? I'm not worth this. And why would anybody believe me? But something's driving me to do it, right? So it's what you think you have to get away from. And that's hard. I mean,
Yes.
battling that conversation right there, that why would anybody want to do this? And, you just have to reframe it in a way that it can work for you. And it's a
So
process.
I really don't think we could have planned this any better. And the best part is that we didn't even plan it.
No, we didn't.
That's the best. Because, and for the folks that are watching this on YouTube, you'll see what's on the screen. And those that are not watching but are listening, I'm going to just sort of say it, that we've studied resilient organizations and individuals,
Yep.
and resilience is the thing that's most on our minds. It's most a part of of the development of our own business, because I wrote a book called Pivot, and a chapter in that book is about resilience.
Yeah.
And now fast forward a few years later, and the book is Resilience and the chapter is Pivot.
Yeah.
And it's really both as well, but you've got to develop your own resilience in this world that we're living in the business environment that we are all find ourselves in. And that's tricky because, first of all, there's no kind of resilience courses that are taught when we're 3 and 5 and 10 years old. We only have the models of people around us, the family and friends, and maybe even in school. So this is something that's been thought of as a soft skill. I think it's been dismissed in ways because people think it's not something you can actually teach or can learn, but something maybe you're just born with. And I think what you're describing, at least the way you started in terms of learning a new language, like the language of marketing, you said you've got to learn to reframe. And that, when we've studied, as our research has revealed, the first theme of resilient individuals and organizations is the ability, the capacity to reframe.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get your beat on what reframing means.
I would love to. And I want to take a quick step back because that's something that really I just got, like I really heard it. when you talked about how people, our worldview, we're growing up with our parents and our family and our friends, and they're the ones that are teaching us resilience. They're teaching us their resilience and what works for them, not what works for you. And, as a kid, I was a very sensitive kid. I'm a dyslexic, and it was misdiagnosed many years ago. So, when my one parent would say, just, don't worry about it. It's like, well, that's easier said than done. That's not my level of resilience. Right. And then the other one is just, like, we'll turn the other cheek. Well, you know what happened to me every time I turned the other cheek? The other one got smacked, I wasn't very good. I was good at turning the cheek, but what happened is that I got railroaded. So it wasn't until later in life that I became resilient. I was surviving, growing up. That's basically what it was. That wasn't resilience. That's
No.
just pure instinctual survival to make it into the next day.
Yes.
So take the reframe question, and reframing for me was, okay, I know I can survive, and there's got to be something, there's a better life out there. And it was the first thing that it took was, I think when you reframe something in life, I think you have to reestablish and re-identify what boundaries make sense in the moment and at your stage of life, because we all have, and if you're not putting boundaries up, then you know what, you're just going to get walked all over, and you'll never be able to be resilient, and you'll never be able to reframe, and you'll never be able to move forward. You're always going to be stuck in this underneath somebody else's feet. And that's no place for anybody to live. So, there's, my definition of resilience is, right along there with, the Navy SEALs. It's just embrace the suck, because you learn stuff from it, right? It's your personal challenge. But reframing is different. That is taking an intellectual look at how you're feeling.
Yes.
And then coming up with a new formula, so that way you don't feel as bad, or you don't feel as suppressed, or you don't feel as stuck.
Right.
And once you do that, you find yourself in forward motion. And when you're in motion, you won't feel those things.
Well, it's interesting because reframing, I think the way it came up in our conversation a moment ago is that it was in the context of relearning.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, I think what I was really feeling when you said it, that was such a strong hit for me, was this idea that relearning is what reframing is. You are relearning something. You framed it a certain way. It may have been framed that way for you when you were a kid. It may be framed through your own life experiences or the programming or whatever it might be. But at a certain point, you're faced with a challenge in a situation, and you're giving it a meaning.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, I'm not a marketer. I'm not a salesperson. I don't speak that language. That's Japanese to me. And I only speak, 10 other languages.
Right.
So will you ever be able to market or succeed in that space if the frame that you're looking at it through is a frame of, I suck at this, I could not learn this?
Nope. The narrative has to change.
You have to relearn. Exactly. Yep. You have to change the narrative. You have to relearn, or even, I suppose, in some way, unlearn.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the reframe, which I think is so powerful. I might as well go through there's three themes that we typically, when we're either presenting this material to an organization or we're writing about it or sharing information, we talk about these three themes. One is the reframe, which you just covered so nicely. And thank you. The second one is the reset.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to, without even telling you what we think or what we found about resetting, what's your beat on reset?
I think reset to me is taking the necessary time to allow the reframing process to happen. So this past summer, this is crazy. I had it was in 6 weeks, 5 people that I knew passed away, including my business partner. And none of them was related to COVID. And I flew out to Utah for the funeral. Will, that's actually where I hooked up with Will and another SEAL that came out with us. And the funeral was on my birthday and I couldn't think of a better place to be. But on the way back, I felt like a square peg in a round hole. I knew that my whole life had just been shifted. No, but I was really counting on this project that we were doing. We were 4 days away from launching it. And so I got home. I'm trying to figure out, like, how am I going to keep this thing alive? How am I, I thought business was moving in this direction. And I just felt the walls closing in. I just got done, healing from a dislocated elbow in March. And the whole time between March and April, I had presented, what to do with the coronavirus, the arrival of the coronavirus and the new laws that come out to 3,500 employers. I was pretty cooked at that point. I was ready for a sexual harassment case. Just give me something different and unique. But nothing shifted. And then with all these people that I knew that were passing away, one literally right after the other. And it's just like, I always like, okay, these things come in threes, and then it was 4, and then it was 5. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so I just felt the walls closing, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. And that's exactly what I did. I catered my life in a way that I built it in a way that I could be on the road and I could work wherever I am. It doesn't matter. I can be anywhere in the world and do what I do. And so I got in the car, grabbed my puppy, and we drove from Virginia to California, and we had business trips all along the way. And while I did it, I spent 50 hours listening to let's put it this way. I was listening to this one particular entrepreneur and 50 hours of his podcast and his audiobook. And in 25 days is what it took for me to get the reset process done. And I went through all of the everything of mourning and everything emotion. And by the time I came back, I felt good because I was looking at different things and seeing different people. I was engaging in business in a different way. I was looking at it from a different mindset. I was looking at myself from a different mindset. And I didn't feel stuck because I was in motion for 25 days, even though a couple of days here, I stayed in Utah for about 5 days and, doing business, and some things fell through, some things started moving forward. And I was just it's like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I'll take what comes my way and build it to the best of my ability. But it was great because I just allowed the process to be. And when I came back, I got to hit the ground running. And then, I got into a learning mindset again. And now it's just like crushing it.
So the reset for you involved staying in motion.
Yeah.
And not, again, as you said, it's so individualized.
Yeah.
That the way a reset looked for you might look different for someone else. But
absolutely,
when we look at reset, we typically just think in terms of you're often, you're like off in the weeds somewhere. Your car is driven off the road. You're in the weeds and you've made a wrong turn or what have you. And the question arises in your mind, meaning your collective, our minds, that I can't get there now. I can't get there from here. It's like that old commercial. I think it was like a cranberry, commercial. And there's some guy from Maine who says, you can't get there from here.
The like, 2 guys standing in the cranberry pots.
2 guys.
Those guys
standing in a bog, right?
Right.
Can't get there from here. And I'm always sort of reminded that our GPS will tell us the truth.
Yeah.
The GPS does not judge us for having driven off the road and got stopped and stuck in the weeds. It simply tells us the truth every time.
Yeah. But your navigators are the ones that do, right? And that's where, when you're in this reset, there's a couple things that have to happen. For me, it was about being in motion, but the other things that kicked in and took place, that first and foremost is that, I had to figure out that I was going to be okay no matter what happened. And I know that, but then there's a deeper conversation that you have to buy into it. Right. And, and like I was just telling you, I just got done doing these marketing courses, and, if you, this is the sign of really good marketing, right? Everybody tells you that if you do A, B, C, and D, you're going to be a phenomenal success, right? So I'm doing A, B, C, and D, and I'm failing horribly, right? Just, I mean, sucking wind, licking the curb. You come up with any cliche and that's been me, right? At least I think so. But along the way, I'm learning about what comes out of failure. And I've always had this quote that, success is a byproduct of failure. And I've been very proud of that. But here's the thing that I never included in my own personal mindset, even when I tell people this, even when I believe it, is that you have to like forgive yourself for failing. And once you do that, you know what? Then your aperture opens. And it was amazing. Just in 4 days, I went from, I'm doing all these things and I'm having somebody telling me that you're not going to get it right on the first time. Matter of fact, you're not going to get it right on the 10th time. But if you keep at it, you're going to get it and it's going to happen. And I've seen those little successes start to happen. And then I went, you know what? Out of all of this marketing that's out there and telling you that you should do A, B, C, D, and you're going to be an outrageous success, that's the one thing that they're not telling you.
Yeah. They're not telling you
It's
you're
okay.
you're going to need to be so tenacious,
Yeah.
and you're going to have so many down days. I mean, I know some really successful marketers that have some pretty crappy days. And I don't mean, normal, just everyday crappy days. I mean, the business wheels are coming off, or the thing that they themselves were doing successfully has changed because, and the algorithm has changed, and pick an algorithm, pick a thing.
Right.
So,
and I think the formula that happens in the journey is that you put something out there and, and the thing is that when I really got that it's, that they're comfortable with their marketing efforts not working because they know something's going to click, it allowed me to get away from that pressure that I put on myself without really realizing it. And that's going after that sale every time somebody looks at what it is that you're putting out. And again, when you've got these marketers that say you do this, 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 and this, and you'll be an outrageous success, they really do make you believe that you're going to do it, which again is the sign of good marketing. But when you're applying it, and if you really want to be successful, you have to remember, and you have to like really be okay with saying, I'm going to try this. But when you try it, watch for what's working and get rid of what doesn't. So take what's working and now apply that to the second thing. And more than likely it will work again, but then you marry it to something else. And ooh, hey, I just made it. It's like making a snowball, right? And then you go run over to like with just a dusting of snow. And then you go run over to here and you pack some more snow in because now it's getting bigger, right? And it's just all of a sudden stuff just clicks. And it's like, whew, I found something. And now things are starting to move forward, right?
yeah.
And I think that's true in learning everywhere, but
it's an interesting concept in so many ways. And it reminds me of a book that I read a few months back by Cal Newport called So Great They Can't Ignore You, or something like that. I think
I
that's
love
the title.
that.
And it's not, he took that term, be so great they can't ignore you, or be good enough or great enough they can't ignore you, from Steve Martin, the comedian.
Yeah.
Who was at some point being interviewed by Charlie Rose on some show. And they're saying to Steve, or Charlie saying to Steve, how you just like, when you hit the scene and people knew about you, it was just lights out. I mean, he was filling stadiums and it was the height of success. And then he stopped at a certain point, stopped doing any stand-up comedy after a few years, and he started to describe that it was the 15 years of struggle before that moment where people knew his name and he became, quote, successful. He said that he was working on his craft so methodically, so vigilantly, tirelessly. I mean, tired, exhausted, frustrated, upset, self-doubting, miserable, all the array of emotions over the course of a period, of a long period, where the world was not recognizing the effort, not rewarding the effort. And he kept going. And so to be too good for people to ignore you was his sort of driving mantra, that he just would become so great that they would not be able to ignore him any longer. And so I think what Cal used that for in the book was this concept of, instead of sort of, Cal's goes against follow the passion. I'm giving big props to Cal right here. I don't know him, and it's the only book of his I've read, but I thought it was really valuable that the idea of developing the craftsman's mindset to become so good at something that you develop the career capital for it. And then he brings it to the conversation, the idea that things happen like the one you just described, that when you become committed to something at that level, you find a piece of a puzzle. You find something that works. Maybe there's 2 things out of 10 that work, and the other 8 things just are maddening. They're maddening because you spent time on them, you spent money on them, you hired people, and now you have nothing really other than these 2 little things. And you don't even know how these 2 things fit anything. Yeah. But then, like you said, all of a sudden you find that those 2 things fit 2 other things, and then they fit another thing. And then before you know, it's like you're saying, you're packing them together in like this snowball, and then you actually have something and you go, wow. And it didn't come in a nice, neat thing. You didn't buy a snowball. And so I find it a little bit, I got to call BS on some of these companies that say, yeah, it's A, B, C, D, and we'll show you A, B, C, D.
I agree.
Right. Because it just doesn't really work like that, at least not in my experience.
Yeah, you're right. And there's something that I, when I've got an HR community that I lead now, and we're growing, we're at 257 members, and we're not even a year old. And these are dedicated people in the field of human resources that are coming, going, we want more, right? We want it. This is what we're looking at accomplishing. And, I can't get information out there fast enough sometimes, but there's a distinct difference. When company leaders, and this is where there's a disconnect between a CEO and an HR person. All right. And I'm just now kind of starting to play in this area because it's going to apply to both things. I have a 7-month-old puppy that's like 75 pounds and bigger than the ark. And I don't know what he just knocked over. I'm sorry. Anyway.
No, it was just cool to watch him walk behind you. And it's like seeing a polar bear, like a little baby polar bear behind there.
So you've got, CEOs look at a return on investment, but HR people make the mistake of gauging everything. You said the word earlier, effort. It's a return on effort. So if you look at investment, an investment is something where it's a magic recipe of time, money, resources that eventually should produce something if you nurture the motion, right? Effort is different. Effort is like pushing on a big stone, on a big boulder, right? You can put effort into moving that boulder, but you haven't invested anything into it. And what happens is when you let go of your effort, that kinetic energy stops. But when you've invested something into it, those are tools and mechanisms to help you get that boulder from one spot to the desired spot. Effort is just part of it. And so, when you talk about Steve Martin, he was just so focused on honing his craft and the effort. My question would have been, what was his investment into it? How many people was he out circulating to try and get in? And we make the mistake. And I think that's where sometimes people fail, is that we focus more on the effort of trying to get something done rather than figuring out what's the formula to make it happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes total sense. I think in Steve's case, it's the hundreds, if not thousands of cheap club dates, being in front of an audience of 5 people who've been drinking too much, or an audience of 50 people, or whatever. Yeah. I mean, and practicing your craft to the point where, you got it dialed in. And then that part of it isn't the whole pictures. I think that's, what we're saying is that it requires this ability to really go the distance. Like when I think of, for us, the definition of resilience is the ability to leverage adversity as a catalyst for growth, and using that adversity as a way to inspire continued growth, not to inspire quitting or inspire turning to some other thing that feels like a shiny object in the moment, but instead really just honing the craft so that eventually there are these collateral benefits that come from it, whether it's the meeting of someone, the partnering with someone that comes out of nowhere and you go, whoa, where'd that come from? Or the putting some of those pieces together that you wouldn't have known to put together, but for the fact that you've spent those 10,000 hours plus
Yeah.
working on something.
Yeah.
So I want to get to this third theme when it comes to resilience, because I think it fits so well with the theme of our conversation today, which is recovery. Again, the research is really clear that resilience is not about endurance alone. It's not just physical. It's mental, it's emotional, it's even spiritual. And to be able to go the distance, to have the longevity that Steve Martin had, to be able to succeed in his craft, the longevity that you're having to be able to succeed in your craft, you really have to be able to be around. You can't win a race you don't finish, right? So many people just get sidelined by illness. They get sidelined by other things that happen in their lives, things that might even feel or look like self-sabotage. So how is it that you continue to produce your resilience through recovery, and specifically through recovery rituals?
Yeah. You know what? I got really clear. There's a couple things that I did. I spoke at a women's conference in New York City last year, this November last year. And
back when we actually would speak in public?
Yeah, you can actually see people. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. And I felt like I kind of hit a pinnacle. Like I hit a high spot, because after my presentation that evening, I found myself, without planning it, at the Plaza Hotel having champagne, $32 glass of champagne. And I was like, oh my God, how did I get here? And it was awesome. And, I was all excited and amped up. And that's when I really started to look inward and say, you know what, if you're going to be successful, you got to really start doing things that matter and not chase your tail. But I was in the beginning and I didn't have any feedback and I didn't know really what my audience wanted. And, it's kind of like, I got over the first hurdle in the race. It's kind of like, okay, we got the first one, right? The next one feels like it's 5 feet away, but it looks like it's about 5 years. And so one of the things that I had done when I was there is that I slept, and I was in New York City. And, how you get around in New York City is not by a car. And I was walking everywhere. I walked to church and, I rode the subway and it was great. And I loved it. And I'm like, I felt so good. And then that's when I was like, I haven't really done anything. I've eaten like a pig. I've had, champagne and, but I'm walking and I'm sleeping. And I started to tune into that. So when I got back to Virginia, where I live, I started to make sure that I got at least 6 to 7 hours of sleep versus 4 to 5. Huge difference. And then I was like, recovery's starting to be a big thing. When I lost my business partner and I met Will, and all these guys had, all of them, my business partner, and the other SEAL that we went out with, Will had one. And it was all these things, this thing called a Whoop. And a Whoop is one of those, it's this biometric reader. And I got it because I'm like, okay, well, they're obviously doing, because they check their Whoop, and it was just like this little boys club. It was hilarious. And so I'm like, oh, what's so big about this Whoop? And I looked into it, and it was different because it doesn't count your steps. It actually tells you what your body is doing. And I loved it. So I ordered one, I got involved with it, and I started paying attention to my sleep because I knew that I was doing better. But the Whoop tells you, your recovery at the end of the day, if you've recovered enough or you haven't recovered quite a bit. And it's funny because when I feel like crap and I look at my Whoop, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. Something happened. I may have gotten to sleep, but something happened and I'm not recovering. So Will had sent me a sample, a bottle of his CBD gummies. And I thought, this is awesome. So I took one, and I'm such a lightweight. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go take a nap now. I did. And it was great. And I had good sleep. So then I was like, this is interesting. So I started taking a gummy before I went to sleep. And I started getting really, really good quality sleep. And my Whoop was telling me that. And I thought, this is interesting. So then, I, noticed that come the end of the day, it's hard for me to disconnect. So about 5 o'clock, I'm like, all right, I'm going to see what happens when I take two, not at the same time, but I go take a nap. But I took one at 5. And what I found is that I started to slow down in the evening, and I wasn't like trying to jam a bunch of stuff in. And then I'd have another one before I go to bed. My recovery got better based off of my Whoop. Then I went ahead and I listened after my, I call it my American walkabout for 25 days. And I listened to this one episode where this gentleman was talking about how he dedicates from 5 a.m. Now I have a puppy who wakes me up at anywhere between 4 and 5 to go out, right? He's getting a little bit better, but up until that point, he was always waking me up. That he'd get up the same time every morning, grab his, protein shake. And at the time I was doing greens, grab his coffee, grab his laptop, and use the first 3 hours of his day to move his business forward. And then he talked about how restructuring. So I changed the structure of my day. So the first part of my day is about me focusing in on my business. The second half of my day, after 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, is podcasting, videos, interviews, meetings, anything that has nothing to do with moving my business forward, but it's all the other stuff that I have to do, right? Huge difference. And then my Whoop told me differently, right? Told me that I was making better decisions. And so I realized that my personal recovery for me starts at 5 o'clock when I take that first CBD gummy, because then I start slowing my brain down. I have a father who has Alzheimer's and I take care of him. I'm his trustee. I'm starting to see what happened. He was a high level executive for 23 years and his brain is burned out. And that's something that is a study that we've learned, is that CEOs that are high level charged positions in bigger corporations are more likely to develop dementia and Alzheimer's now, because their brains have been so active for so long because they don't shut it down, right? My dad would lay on the couch and watch TV on the weekends, and he wasn't watching TV. He was looking at a box with things moving in front of him while he was stuck in his head.
Yes.
So he burns himself out, right? And I can see the repercussions of that. I don't want that to happen to me. So I started focusing on my recovery. Now I'm turning 50 in August.
Well, that was a deep breath right there. That was so uncomfortable to watch you do that. Oh my God. You guys, seriously, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you need to just I don't want to watch that one little spot right there. Because you know what? Listening to this, it's just not going to do that justice. Oh God.
Anyway, I'm moving into a different stage of my life.
Look, I'm after 50, so this is life, I promise you.
No. Anyway, so, but I'm already starting to see the things that he went through that I could fall victim to. So I'm doing what I need to do right now to stop that progression from happening.
Time, the clock, and gravity are not working
in your favor,
in our favor. And that's not be upset or scared about it. It's like, well, what are you doing on a consistent basis to just take care of yourself? And the studies, the research, the data points, all the sort of analysis point to one thing, and that is that people that have rituals for recovery, just like great athletes, great successful entrepreneurs, business owners, parents, you've got to have rituals. You've got to have specific rituals for your recovery, because that's what recharges the battery. That's what allows you to come back and have greater capacity and go, seemingly forever.
Yeah.
Interesting. So your ritual is that you've adopted this practice of taking these CBD gummies at the end of the day to start your winding down and your period of rest, because there's a difference even between sleep and rest.
Yeah.
And rest is so vital. It's so important. That's the recovery. And you allow your mind to rest, your body to rest, and other things that are going on. So you start it, and then of course you have something that you take before you go to bed, so that just like you have a nice restful, full sleep, and you're seeing the change in
Huge.
you're getting up early. Well, you were getting up early anyway, but now you're getting up and you're getting at the hardest things or the most impactful things, let's call them, to drive your business when you're the freshest, which is really
Yep.
those first, whatever it is, 3-4 hours of the day.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Thanksgiving Day was the hardest day in a long time because I wanted to work. And I forced myself to plant myself on the couch and watch movies. And I didn't want to. It's like I want to go upstairs, but I knew I was tired. Like I was emotionally tired, but that entrepreneurial drive that's there to keep going. And I've always been a work driver, but it was just like, no, you need to stop. And I was bored. There was nothing else going on. So I'm like, well, find something that you enjoy doing. And
Does the whoop yell at you? Does the whoop give you like, does it
no, the
shame?
whoop's very quiet. The whoop's very
I
quiet.
think we're gonna up level the whoop so that it's like,
But what people don't know about me is that I'm building 4 companies. And so I'm like, well, I've got this day and nobody's going to bother me. And I can work on this project. And I'm just like, oh, shut up, just stop,
Yeah.
And I forced myself to do it. Like I can only go outside and walk so many times with the dog. He loved it, but it was just like, okay, it's hard. It's hard to unplug, but you have to force yourself to do it. Come Friday. And that always happens to me on the first day I take a vacation too. But this was the hardest this time around. And then Friday, I was like, okay, I can do this. And, I had to do a little bit of work and I got that done. I still got up at 5 a.m. and I still sat down and I still did my business stuff. But, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I stopped,
Yep.
and I enjoyed the rest of my day. And I did a little bit of the same thing on Sunday, and that's okay, because that's a performance habit and you don't want to shed that.
I think everybody's gonna, you have to sort of self-evaluate, and I'll put this out there too, which I think is very important. You've got to find out what your baseline is.
Yeah.
And what I think the Whoop is helping you with is that it's created a bit of a baseline for you. We, a couple of years ago, developed some questions to help people to find their baseline. We call it a resilience assessment tool. I'll put it out to everybody that's listening to this now. You can go to your.resilienceculture.com, your.resilience with a CE culture.com. And 3 minutes of answering these 16 questions will get you your rank. Will give you the score. It'll tell you what your baseline is, most importantly, and what you could do to make some changes. And our list is so not exhaustive because I don't even know that we cover CBD, for example, as one of those things that could help you, a new ritual or something that would help you to recover. But what's cool about that assessment is it's divided up into those 4 areas. So physical is important, but mental resilience, emotional resilience, and even spiritual resilience is really vital. So I will say I just knew we were going to have a great conversation. We did the last time too, without any planning or any of that. And I just love the way you communicate. Do you communicate? So we talked about your evening ritual. Mm-hmm. I'm going to end this podcast talking about my morning ritual, my waking ritual. But do you have a waking ritual? Do you have something you do every single morning the same?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get up, Yoo-hoo over here lets me know he's got to go out.
Yoo-hoo.
And it's cold out there right now. Yeah. So I get Nakoa outside, get him fed. I walk over, I make my coffee, and then he tells me he wants to go out again, which you think I'd be smart and wait until he tells me after that he's got to go out a second time to make my coffee. But my morning ritual that really gets me going, that makes me feel good, is my coffee and my half and half. And then I just go and I just sit down. I get my greens together and I go sit down and I start working on, okay, what is the day going to look like? And what do I need to do? And what does the money look like? And, what's most important and what do I need to pull back from? And that's how I set my day up. And I don't take on more than I know I can accomplish in a day. And if anything, the other thing too that I do is that I do the hardest thing that I don't want to do first.
Yes.
And
That's a key thing there. The-
yeah, I
Yeah.
like having fun, and to me, work is fun. And I really, really enjoy doing things that I like to do. Right. And I don't have a lot of constraints in my life. I don't have a husband and I don't have children right now. And so I don't have a lot of constraints. I have a furry child. That's about it. And he goes everywhere with me. So I really don't have any constraints other than money. Right. And I think that's everybody's constraint. But that's why you work hard. So you build more freedom. But
Yes.
so for me to do something that I'm not like I don't like outwardly, you would never know that I do this, but on the inside, I'm like a crying, whiny baby in my head about it. And it's just like, when I hear that, it's just like, just shut up and get it done. Just do it, get it over with, and then you can enjoy everything else that you need to do.
Our oldest daughter, Chelsea, has a way to approach that, which I love. She just goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then she starts. She gives herself this countdown. She's like,
Nice.
instead of sitting in her dirty diaper,
Yeah, nice. But yeah,
whining
I'm in my
about it.
head, it's like, oh, this
She
is
goes
good.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, and she
Yeah,
starts it. That's
yeah,
it.
I find that I spend more time complaining about it than it actually took to to do the damn task.
So funny. Well, I will again just thank you for all the wonderful insights you shared with our community today.
Yeah,
And
happy to. Thank you.
I love for myself just to um, end the same way I end every episode, with a reminder for me and for anybody that has either heard this and requires the reminder like I do, or has never heard this before. But I think that the most impactful moment of the day for myself is that waking moment. I can either put myself on the right track, be thinking rightly and making right decisions, if I start the day off on the right foot. And when I don't start the day off on the right foot, it's a different matter entirely. So that first thought of the day, the first waking act of the day is super important. So for me, it's first of all, waking up. There's 3 parts to this thing. It's very basic. Wake up. That's the first piece. And as kind of corny as that sounds, I recognize when I do wake up and I recognize myself having that awareness, I go, there's somebody who's not waking up right now. Somebody went to bed last night, same time as I did, that didn't get this moment. In fact, even in the moment that I'm aware of that, there's somebody who's taking their last breath right there. That's no BS. That's not corny. That's the reality of it. So I go, whew, okay. So this is different. Makes this moment different. For me, makes it really sacred. And in that same moment, it's so easy for me to just go to gratitude, and gratitude is the strongest state change that I'm aware of or that has ever worked on me. And so getting into gratitude at the beginning of the day sets me on the right foot. And then I say something out loud. So I want to feel grateful, but I also want to express it out loud and put that into motion, that very strong intention. And so what I say out loud is, I love my life. These are the 4 simple words that I shared on a TED stage about a year and a half ago. These 4 words that just have rocked my world for 12 years. It never ceases to not do its job. Like, I'm in the middle of fear, I'm doubt, or worried, or any of those kind of emotions, I just can grab onto this one buoy. And the buoy is that statement, those words, I love my life, no matter what. And I mean, we're in no matter what times right now for a lot of folks, right? So I'll ask you that question. Do you love your life?
I do. I do. I really do. Because I built it into something that I really appreciate. So yeah, I do love my life. And when you come out of a funk, and everybody's in a funk with COVID right now, but when you come out and you start feeling good, that's when you have to tell yourself, you know what, I'm happy, because there's not a lot of times in people's lives where they recognize what that looks like, and you're probably more happier more often than you really realize. But we get down by all the other stuff because we're not creatures of positivity. We have to force that out. We're not wired to be positive like instantly. We have to create it for ourselves.
Yeah, we're wired to stay alive. That's
Exactly.
our ultimate wiring, is stay alive.
Yep.
And a lot of that is just fear that drives us by instinct or otherwise to protect ourselves. So Brenda, it's such a pleasure. And
Thank
I love
you.
the conversation. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Super. Now, for folks that are wanting to leave a comment or a question, go to adammarkel.com/podcast to do that. You'll find all the show notes there as well. And the show notes from this particular episode will give you more information about Brenda and the work that she's doing, the company that she has, and the way that you can interact with her. So please feel free to do that. Leave a comment, let us know. And if there's somebody that you know that would also really benefit from hearing this episode, love it if you'd share it with them. We'd love for you to subscribe, of course, but sharing it with a friend is really powerful. And that's super helpful in terms of us growing this community. So again, thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you now have the tools and greater insights to navigate your own pivot. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at adammarkel.com/podcasts. For more tips, strategies, and support as you consciously pivot into a new business and lifestyle you love, join our Pivot community on Facebook at pivotfb.com.